Remember Sheldon Richardson's comments on old man football years ago? Well, in order to beat Alabama, Missouri is going to have to go old school on their ass.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And on today's program, I have to admit something to all of you. I'm still not sure who I think is going to win the Southeastern Conference. But with all that said, why not Missouri? Let's talk about that. Let's also talk about how I finally found someone on this big, beautiful planet of ours that actually likes Ahmad Hardy, maybe even more than I do, as hard as that is to believe. Before I start the program, quickly, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. And you know what? I miss Sheldon Richardson. I really do. And most importantly, I miss people like Sheldon Richardson and Norm Stewart. I bet those two guys haven't been in the same sentence a whole lot over the years. But two guys who like to mix it up a little bit in the media. Not just the safe, we're on to Cincinnati, in the Bill Belichick mode. Frankly, the Gary Pinkel mode a little bit too. Although Gary Pinkel's, well, his mode has a lot of merit to it. That's why I've always said Eli Drinkwitz has a little bit of Norm Stewart in him as well. But speaking of good old Sheldon Richardson, all the way back in 2012, Sheldon's final year with Missouri, but the Tigers' first year in the SEC, well, Georgia was Missouri's first Southeastern Conference ever all those many years ago now. And entering that football game, Sheldon did some scouting. And on Georgia's previous game, he said, quote, famously, I watched that game. I turned it off too. It's like watching Big Ten football. It's old man football. If we execute, nobody in this league can touch us. Period. Well, to say the least, that one didn't age spectacularly well. And in fact, in the fourth quarter, when Georgia took control of what ultimately was a 41-20 victory by the Dogs, well, their fans in Faurot Field were chanting, old man football, old man football. And honestly, who could blame them after that, after Sheldon shot off his mouth there? That was probably not the wisest move of all time, but I'll tell you this, he wasn't wrong. In fact, Sheldon Richardson was a lot closer to right than, well, a lot of Georgia fans were probably willing to admit at the time. But Sheldon had a point. Back then, you see, the SEC, and especially the Georgias, the Alabamas, the LSUs, the creme de la creme of the conference back then, well, those teams, they did play old man football, or at least, let's just say 1990s style NFL football. A lot of I formation, a lot of, play action pass, a lot of tight ends. Nothing necessarily wrong with any of that. But at the time, of course, Missouri and others, Oregon and other teams had started running, of course, Mike Leach down at Texas Tech, running a ton of spread offense that now has become, well, the norm throughout a college football. But here's the irony here. Of course, while Sheldon was kind of, not only making fun of SEC football, but yes, the Big Ten caught a stray as well. So again, you got to love Sheldon Richardson. Not only on the field, but if you're writing down his quotes, he had to be a fun guy to cover as well, I got to imagine. But he wasn't totally wrong. Not only just overall, of course, I kind of made the big picture statement there, but even in that ball game, just quickly here, even though it was 41-20 at the end of the day, well, with about 3 minutes left in the third quarter, Missouri actually led that ball game 20-17. Only for the Dogs to quickly score on a 5-play, 72-yard touchdown to take the lead that it would not relinquish, and Missouri would not score again the rest of the game. In fact, this fourth quarter, I don't have a lot of memories of the fourth quarter. I just know it didn't go well for Missouri. But listen to this drive summary. 6 plays for 15 yards and a field goal. 1 play for 1 yard and a touchdown. And also 3 plays for 5 yards and a touchdown. So two touchdown drives that totaled 6 yards in the fourth quarter for Georgia, and then a 15-yard field goal drive. How bizarre is that? There must have been some terrible turnovers and all kinds of misfortune, probably a huge punt return in there, something. Forgive me for not remembering the exact details from 13 years ago. But regardless, the point here is the irony is I think Missouri is going to have to play old man football to beat Alabama. And I think that's really Missouri's advantage against the Crimson Tide. Of course, if you've heard me this week, you've already heard me talk a little bit about this game already. I keep looking at not only the Florida State game, where Alabama was dominated on both sides of the ball, just in terms of the running game, well, also against Georgia, even with Jam Miller, the Alabama running back returning for the Tide. I just didn't see any explosiveness in that Alabama running game. Wasn't particularly efficient either. Now, obviously, a huge win for Alabama down in Athens, but I think it's still fair to wonder just how good Georgia is, just how good Alabama is. By the way, just how good Missouri is as well. We're still very early into the season here. The Tigers and all of these teams have all been tested to one extent or another. The point here is that I think all of these teams, every single team in the conference right now, has some obvious flaws, including the Tigers, of course, and their penchant for giving up massive plays defensively, especially in the passing game. So my whole thing here is with the way the Southeastern Conference is playing out right now, this offseason, I kind of nailed it in terms of, hey, I thought this was going to be a wide-open league, the most exciting SEC we've seen in a long time. That's looking like a pretty good prediction right now. But one thing that isn't looking quite as good, I thought Georgia was about as sure a thing as there was in this conference. I thought, hey, if you're going to give me any team that's going to be a top 5 type team nationally, I'll go down and ride with Georgia. I'm just not quite sure if Georgia's an elite team right now or what even an elite team means this year in college football. It just seems like, at least in the power conferences, in particular the SEC and even the Big Ten, look at teams like Indiana, it just seems like at the top it's a lot more evened out than it has been in, well, certainly the old man football era. So really, I'm not saying that Missouri is the favorite by any stretch of the imagination at this point. I'm not willing to go that far. But at the same time, when everybody else has shown pretty obvious flaws too, why couldn't it be Missouri? And as Missouri and Sheldon Richardson were reminded in 2012, well, old man football is at times not always the most exciting thing in the world, but it can be winning football too. And Missouri's rushing attack so far, well, on both sides of the ball, the rushing attack and the rushing defense the numbers are just nothing short of astronomical at this point. Plus, I want to talk a little bit more about the history between Missouri and Alabama and why it makes it a particularly big game for the Tigers coming up. First, though, let's talk about Mazda, where Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. And Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. And from footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, by the way, you can drive with confidence through any season. And like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And I love to talk sports, but I also like to talk money. But I know that most people can't even name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth. Well, when you don't have the full picture, I'm telling you, you're leaving money on the table, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives and who aren't like me, who just want to stare at their computer and stock charts all day. That sounds like a fun afternoon to me. Probably not most people. Well, again, Monarch can link all your accounts in minutes. You can see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of all your spending, by the way. You'll finally feel in control of all your money without ever even touching a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. And in its 5 games so far this season, the Tigers have rushed for 1,460 yards, while they've just given up 312 rushing yards defensively. That means that Missouri has outrushed their opponents by more than 1,100 yards total through 5 games so far this season. That is frankly a difficult statistic to fathom. And really it makes it, when you see just how good Missouri's been there versus, well, the lack of success on the other side, if you're looking at Alabama's perspective, it's a little difficult to fathom that over at FanDuel, by the way, Alabama, your favorite to win the SEC right now at plus 250, whereas Missouri is plus 2,000, meaning they're 20-1 to win the conference. Now, if Missouri, obviously, if they beat Alabama, well, those odds are going to flip fairly dramatically in the other direction for both teams. The thing is, Alabama, by the way, not only would this be a massive deal on a whole bunch of different levels, but it's not just national fans is what I'm trying to get to here. It's not just national fans, I think, that are underestimating Missouri simply because of, well, hey, it's Alabama and Missouri. Who would you pick if you're a casual fan? Obviously Alabama, right? But I just don't think it's quite that simple anymore. And frankly, I think a lot of Missouri fans are stuck in the past still a little bit too, understandably. I get it. Just imagine being a Kansas City Chiefs fan in 2025 versus 2015. If you've experienced both of those worlds, well, you can imagine how it took some time for Chiefs fans to shift their mentality and become the annoying, cocky bunch that we are today, for those of you who are not Kansas City Chiefs fans. The point here is this: none of this means that Missouri is destined to win the SEC title or make the college football playoff or anything like that. It just means that the old days of Missouri and Alabama, well, I think those are gone, at least for this season. This is more like, hey, 2 really good teams who are going to be going at it. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if I'm right, and this is actually a good matchup for Missouri at home. Just indeed how these teams match up on paper. Styles make fights, as they say. Well, I think Missouri's style and Alabama's style, I think that's a favorable matchup for Missouri at the moment. I could be completely wrong, but I will say this. Missouri right now, I brought up FanDuel. We've now got an official line. Alabama favored by 6.5 right now in Columbia. I think that's a skosh too high, to be honest with you. But regardless, again, less than a touchdown. Alabama at Missouri. I would have said before the season, and did say before the season, I think 13.5 was my guess. So we're 7 points below that. Yeah, 7, right? I can still do kindergarten math. There we go. Congratulations to me. So, again, that just means the old days, the old mentalities. If anything, I think that line might be a little high. Again, Missouri has outgained its opponents on the ground by 1,100 yards so far this season. I know a lot of that production came against, of course, really inferior competition, but They did pretty well on the ground against Kansas and South Carolina as well, and I just don't necessarily see that advantage going away against the Crimson Tide. Now, maybe the Tide and Ty Simpson and Ryan Williams, maybe they're too much for Missouri's passing attack, their pass defense, especially on the back end in particular. That I could see. That's not a hard thing for me to imagine at all. It is hard for me to imagine Jam Miller, for instance, rushing for over 100 yards against Missouri. I just don't see that happening. And if the Tide are unable to get anything going offensively on the ground again, well, then you're exposing yourself to a lot of passing down, obvious passing type situations against a really good Missouri pass rush, a deep Missouri pass rush as well. I just don't think that's a winning formula for Alabama if Missouri is able to, again, control the ball, hopefully no turnovers. If Missouri just doesn't bite itself in the foot offensively, I think they'll be able to run the ball too. So I like the matchup, as you can tell. At least that's how I'm feeling right now. Maybe I'll feel differently after the Vanderbilt game this week and after taking an even further look at Alabama and talking to my colleagues over at Locked On Bama. But right now, feeling pretty good about the Tigers. And recently I talked about how big this game really is, tried to contextualize it, asked all of you, hey, is this the biggest game in Columbia since certainly LSU in 2023, but probably even farther back than that? Maybe Oklahoma in 2010. Probably, though, it's Texas A&M in 2013 when Missouri, well, had won that game and clinched the SEC East for sure. But to the idea that this might be even bigger than that, well, this is a huge hurdle, and it really is the final hurdle, quite literally, for Missouri since joining the conference. Alabama is the final SEC opponent that Missouri has never beaten. Again, since joining the conference, by the way, the Tigers do have 2 victories. In fact, all time, the Tigers won the first 2 matchup in the series ever. The 1968 Gator Bowl, Missouri rolled to a 35-10 victory there. And then the 1975 opener, by the way, in Birmingham, for some reason or another, Missouri won that game as well, 20-7. However, since then, Missouri lost the Tide in 1978, that famous season. Well, it's been 6 straight for the Crimson Tide, 5 in the SEC era, and believe it or not, the closest of those was the 2020 opener, 38-19. That 19-point loss there, which did not feel that close whatsoever. Well, that was actually as close as Missouri has ever gotten against Alabama. So, again, when you look at that history, it doesn't look so pretty. Again, if you're a casual fan, you're going, yeah, I think I'll back the Crimson Tide. I mean, I completely, 100% understand why anybody would think that way, and maybe they'll be right. I'm just thinking a different way, obviously. And you know what? I'm probably Ahmad Hardy's biggest fan, or at least I thought I was, until this afternoon when I saw a very famous former coach say that Ahmad Hardy is a combination of Marshall Faulk and God. So I wouldn't go quite that far to call him a combination of Marshall Faulk and God. But finally, I did find somebody who likes Ahmad Hardy even more than me. So let's talk about those superlatives, plus Missouri announcing a 7th sellout, and also some more, yes, on the drop kicks. It'll be endlessly fascinating, at least to me. But first, you know what? The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And it honestly just makes football that much more exciting, as if really the SEC needs any more excitement. But if you're watching the Big Ten, if you want to watch old man football, you're going to want to head over to FanDuel to make it actually palatable to watch. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the app today and get started. And this episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. Well, speaking of old man football, this is the old meets the new. A lot of old spots now have the new technology that helps them continue to be part of, well, the old hood. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Something like Shake Shack, a chain that's been, well, rooted in our community for years. They run on Square these days too. It's best. It's great for the new businesses, the old businesses, and everything in between. Even Sheldon Richardson can approve of that. And Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. And former Raiders and Buccaneers coach Jon Gruden. Yes, Jon Gruden is back, everybody. Opening up his latest care package. He's been getting various ones throughout the country, college football teams, even some high school teams as well, I think, that type of deal. Well, Missouri sent him a whole bunch of stuff, including a helmet, a jacket, just all kinds of stuff for Coach Gruden to put on. And, well, basically from Missouri's perspective, hey, give us some free publicity. John will take the free merchandise. But finally, I found somebody who likes Hardy more than I do. Gruden, always a fan of hyperbole, said a combination of Marshall Faulk and God. And I'll tell you this, of course, I enjoyed that and chuckled a little bit. I was much more bothered, not by the blasphemous part of it, of course, but Marshall Faulk, come on now. Listen, it's not even about the quality of Marshall Faulk as a player, a surefire Hall of Famer, a top 5 running back of all time in my book. But just the comparison there. As soon as I see Ahmad Hardy splitting out and running routes from the slot position as if he was a slot receiver in the National Football League, then we can start comparing him to Marshall Faulk. Maybe if he would have called him a combination of Adrian Peterson and God, then maybe I wouldn't have pumped the brakes so hard. But regardless, I just thought that was a funny statement there by Jon Gruden. And obviously great pub for Missouri and Ahmad Hardy. By the way, more good pub leading to more good outcomes for the Tigers. Missouri announced today that Mississippi State, that home game, has sold out. That's 7 for the year. That just leaves 1 remaining. Not sure which one is remaining, but seems inevitable that Missouri is going to sell out all 8 home games this season. And by the way, Drinkwitz went into a little more detail on the drop kicks that Missouri executed against South Carolina. We didn't see it again the next week against UMass, and there's a good example for that. Basically, Drinkwitz was saying that Nick Harbor's presence on the kick return team was the main reason that the Tigers did it. That essentially, during practice, he saw his kickoff man, horsing around, basically dorking around, as Drinkwitz himself called it, and figured out that, hey, this guy can drop kick the ball pretty accurately here, had him do it a bunch of times, and figured, since South Carolina, like most college teams these days, puts 2 kick returners deep, 1 to one side and 1 to the other, Drinkwitz's idea was, hey, if I can kick away from Nick Harbor, that's a win. It's not, I've really focused on the South Carolina punt returner leading into the week, but also Nick Harbor, not only their leading receiver, but a dangerous kick returner in his own right. I totally understand that idea. The part I didn't totally understand was, really, if you're going to do that, then you might as well just go ahead and kick it out of bounds. By all means, yes, if Harbor lines up on the left, kick it to the right and vice versa. Same logic as the drop kick. But as Drinkwitz did add, by the way, he said, I'd never seen anybody do it before. smiling. He was smiling while he said this, by the way. He said, "I've never seen anybody do it before." So there's that too. So I don't know. Hey, the guy's a stinker. What can I tell you? He likes to have some fun. So hey, it did work for Missouri. I'll give it to him there. And initially, Drinkwitz pointed out, hey, we kicked it deep initially with Robbins, the deep kick man, the kickoff specialist there for Missouri with Blake Craig out. But Harbor made a pretty good return, and if it wasn't for a good tackle by Nick Rodriguez, Drinkwitz believes that, well, Harbor might have scored a touchdown there. So after that, Missouri was going, ooh, let's not do that again. Hey, this drop kick thing kind of worked in practice. Let's go with that. So, hey, I give him an A+ for creativity and, well, certainly, I don't know, an A- in execution at the very least. My only worry was, what if he doesn't execute this? Now you are maybe giving up too much field position, whereas, hey, we'll take touchbacks every time with Nick Harbor or just about any other kick return man. Hey, bring it to the 25. I think that 35, that penalty, that should be a rule change in my opinion. That should be the 40-yard line at least. But, hey, the rule's the rule. They're going to let you just kick it OB and take it at the 35. Against that dangerous of a return man, to me, that's a win if you're a special teams unit. That's just me. But, hey, hopefully, once again, Locked On Mizzou's been a win for you today in your podcast feed. Appreciate you checking out the show. If you're listening, well, you can watch it on YouTube if you would like. And if you're watching on YouTube and you'd like to just listen, well, check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get an RSS feed, all that good stuff. Appreciate you, as always. Thanks for telling a friend. Thanks for telling a fellow true son or daughter. That's truly how I spread this thing out. It's been spreading a lot lately like wildfire, so I appreciate you all for that. And until next time, I am John Miller. Thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.